Welcome to our webinar on 5 things every healthcare CIO needs to know to accelerate mHealth innovation. My name is Jikku Venkat. I'm VP Product Management at Kinvey. And joining me today on this webinar is Nikos Kivatsky, co-founder from Redox, and he'll be participating in the presentation with me. Also wanted to note that this webinar is part of a series that we are doing on digital innovation in healthcare and pharma. And you can see or watch a recording of all of the webinars in this series at this URL on the slide below on the previous webinars. And we also have an upcoming webinar which we'll talk about some more at the end of this presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to get started here. So what will you learn from this webinar? Basically, what we're going to talk about here is how you can innovate and innovate quickly while still being able to integrate with both patient-generated and electronic health records, EHR data, and do this really, really fast. And innovative and create a very engaging experience for your customers. So that'll be the key topic we'll focus on. And first off, why is it hard to do this today? Why is it so hard to innovate and do that quickly and securely and in a compliant fashion? I'd like to walk through some of the challenges and the problems that everyone trying to do this faces today. And as we talk about these 5 things, you will come to realize how we address each of these problems and challenges. So first off, starting from the left side of this picture, these mobile applications or hybrid apps or any other kind of experience from a user standpoint that you are trying to create, it's very, very complex. And the reason that it's complex is that you have, first of all, user data sources. For example, your wearable or an implant you have in your body. So there is user-generated data that you need to worry about. Users reporting on outcomes of certain treatments, for example. So there's a bunch of user data sources that needs to be collected, compiled into a a native hybrid, again, or a web app. On the other end, you also have another experience, which is typically a responsive web app where you have a dashboard, whether that dashboard is for the patient, for the provider, or for the payer. It gives you very important information or a visualization of data across your entire user segment. And this is typically, like I said, a responsive web app. And some of the data that is feeding this web app might come from analytics engines that are looking at data that has been generated, doing some deep analytics on this data, and then providing visualization of this data and allowing a user to create their own visualizations and so on. And finally, on the right side of this picture, you have either on-premise or cloud-based systems that host electronic health records, other cloud-based SaaS services that you might be using, authentication systems to enable you to securely log in your users, both on the dashboard app as well as your client-facing app, authorization systems that determine who gets access to what data, and potentially IoT systems, because like I said, the user data sources could be a wearable device, an implant, which is really, if you think about it, an IoT device that is sending some time series data that you may want to host in an IoT system and manage that device using an IoT system. And you need to do all of this in a very compliant way, because this entire system end-to-end is subject to HIPAA high-tech compliance, and it needs to have certain security parameters around it and compliance parameters around it. And once you put this, in production and you go live, you need to arm technical people that are supporting your application end-to-end with some dashboards, some information that helps them troubleshoot problems that users might be calling in about, whether they are performance problems, functional issues, and so on. So how do you deal with all of that? You need some type of operational intelligence to help your folks support the entire solution. So this is what some of these are, and what makes it very hard to innovate and do it quickly, because there are so many moving parts and so many things to worry about and care about. So we'll now start to dive into the first of the 5 things we are going to talk about. And for this particular section, I'm going to hand off to my partner here, Nico, from Redox. Nico, over to you.
Thanks, Chiku. So the first thing that we're going to dive into here is how can we integrate these applications that you're looking to build or adopt to the EHR systems that your providers and care team is using on a day-to-day basis. And this needs to be done in a secure and repeatable way, especially for applications that you're looking to potentially commercialize or bring outside the walls of your health system and have patients using on their mobile devices or on their internet-enabled devices. So if we look at the landscape, Jiku, if you could advance, please. If we look at the landscape of the types of applications that we're talking about here, one of the common threads that we'll see is that it requires clinical patient data in many of these applications in order for them to actually provide the efficiency gains or the quality gains that so much of them promise, right? If you're going to better coordinate care, we need to know who the care team is, we need to know what care we're coordinating for a patient, and so on. So across the landscape of different types of applications that your health system may be interested in, connecting them to the EHR is typically something that is a requirement to make those applications work. So in the typical setting, each of these integrations requires a custom point-to-point connection between the cloud-based application and your EHR, which many of the EHRs that we're running into are legacy on-premise systems that are managed by your IT staff. So this can take months of time to complete each of these interfaces and hours for the interface teams at the health systems to map data from the interfaces that are made available from the EHR to the applications in a way that those applications can consume them. Additionally, on the application side, we've also seen that much of the development resources in building the application are used to figure out how to understand the data coming out of the EHR, whether that's HL7 or a customized version of an interface that the EHR has made available. So this is where Redox comes in. We're able to kind of sit in the middle here and provide a modern API layer, so an application programming interface that allows applications to connect to us once in a consistent way and wrap that into one single connection into your EHR. So the way that we do this is by standardizing the connections on both sides, and then within our cloud-based engine, map them into a much more consistent API for the applications on the top side of this diagram. So in the next slide, we kind of talk through the different interfaces that we're seeing out there. So EHRs are typically equipped with an HL7 interface layer that we'll tap into to grab a lot of the transactional data. There's also custom APIs that EHRs have available to grab CCDs or other sorts of information from them. Additionally, as FHIR, the new standard is being rolled out across EHR vendors, we're excited to map into those as well. So once we have that data coming out of the EHR into Redox, our managed service within that cloud environment maps that data into those consistent JSON fields that applications enjoy using. So this is great for the application side because it gives them the web services that they need to run their applications. And it's also great for the IT teams at the EHR level because Now we're only talking about one interface into the cloud to manage an assortment of different types of applications. And additionally, if you're looking to take your applications that you're developing in-house and commercialize them, get them out there for other health systems to potentially use, this is another great way to build upon a scalable model. So in our next slide, we can show how this API not only works for your EHR, your health system, but it can also map into other EHRs and other health systems through that engine as well. So it's a multi-tenant model in that once an application is hooked into Redox once, it can interoperate with any of the health systems and EHRs at the organizations that they're working with. So we also, beyond just applications that health systems are building on top of us, we also enable third-party commercial software vendors to build on top of our APIs and connect up to health systems. So they're primarily doing this because we allow them that connect once, connect all model, so they can connect into Redox and not have to worry about the intricacies of integrating with each of the interfaces at various health systems and various EHR vendors. The final kind of benefit of working in this model is that there's a wide array of different types of enterprise healthcare applications. So our next slide here. We currently have a gallery that has over 60 enterprise applications that can be adopted through this API. So if you're looking to adopt a telehealth solution, there's a handful, half a dozen or so telehealth solutions that you're able to integrate with through a single API with Redox, as well as remote patient monitoring or patient engagement or filling appointments faster and open appointment slots, all sorts of different things. So the commercial aspects of other third-party applications through this API is also something that health systems typically find appealing and connecting up to this. And so finally, I want to summarize with kind of a statement around how this works with different EHRs. We've partnered with Kinvey to really accelerate digital application creation through their backend as a service and our interface layer into the multitude of applications or EHRs that are used out there. We're exchanging data bidirectionally, both clinical and operational data. There's a lot of it is listed down here, so you can see the different types of data and workflows that we can enable through this interaction. So as you're looking to build applications that help providers become more efficient, that help provide better quality of care, we can really look to work with you to figure out what data do you need and when, and how to get it to the application in a secure and scalable way through your EHR as it exists today. So to summarize, the Redox API and a centralized integration in the cloud reduces the barrier on your IT team to manage multiple connections to the multitude of EHR, well, the multitude of applications that you may be working with. Number two, building apps on an API like this can scale across multiple vendors as well as multiple sites. So if you're looking to commercialize, that can be very important. And finally, number three, you're able to work with other leading health tech applications that are on the market through the single API connection as well. So this infrastructure can be reused for any cloud application that might be part of your IT portfolio strategy. So that's kind of a nutshell of how and why a cloud-based integration strategy is essential to accelerating technology advancement and development in the digital health space. I'm going to turn it back over to JQ to hop into the next accelerating factor.
Thank you, Nico. That was great to hear about how we can integrate with different EHR systems out there, and Redox makes that easy along with Kinvey. The next most important thing we spoke about earlier, one of the challenges is the complexity, right? So how do you reduce this complexity and provide the necessary choice for your community without having to sacrifice anything around compliance or security or efficiency, right? one of the ways that we think you do this is to use a HIPAA compliant backend service that is cloud-based. And the reason that it's important for it to be cloud-based is that it's instantly available, immediately available for use, so you don't have to wait around for infrastructure to be set up and services to be spun up. It's immediately available. Two, it can scale to meet your needs. So you can start very small and scale as your community grows. Again, if you were to do this in a non-cloud way, you would have to provision for peak capacity, and that might take a very long time. And it's available as a service, and therefore you don't have to worry about the SLAs around it, the service levels. All of that is managed by the vendor that is providing this backend service and ensuring the compliance by signing a business associate agreement with you that handles the responsibility of the cloud-based service and their part in the overall compliance model. So the way Kinvey does that is we are starting again from the left side, from developing the application experience itself. We provide a client SDK, and this SDK handles a number of things. It enables, first of all, it abstracts the developer from all the backend system nuances. And we talked about the EHR system and how Redox abstracts that away with their standard JSON API. Similarly, with the client app SDKs, Kinvey will abstract the EHRs through Redox, as well as other authentication systems, authorization systems, any other cloud-based systems that are also, or IoT systems that are also part of the overall solution. Everything is completely abstracted because the developer is simply working on simple methods and interfaces that they can use via the Kinvey SDKs, and these SDKs are available. We give you choice because these SDKs are available across 11 different development platforms, starting from native iOS, native Android, web JavaScript frameworks, Xamarin, and other cross-compiled platforms as well. And the SDKs give you features like securing your data, make sure it's encrypted both at rest and in flight, the ability to work offline, the ability to sync data from an external system when you need to. And in the SDK works with the backend system, the backend services that are responsible for things like identity management, whether you're integrating with an external identity provider or the backend service, in this case Kinvey provides our own, has our own identity provider, so you can allow users to maintain their sign-in and their passwords within Kinvey itself if you don't want to do something externally. We provide capabilities around being able to orchestrate data, to be able to munch the data as it comes in, or when you want to send it back and save it. Maybe you want to represent it in a certain way in the app, and if the data is not coming in a friendly format from the external system, you're able to orchestrate this data. You're able to perform integrations, like I said, with external identity providers, EA systems, again through Redox, and any other IoT systems. And you can do this very rapidly, where you don't have to write any code, and therefore you're not wasting any time. It's configuration only. You simply point Kinvey to the external system, and we'll take care of the rest on discovering what is available and then allowing you to do some orchestration around that data. Every application we find, people focus on the front end of the application, the client side of the application, but almost all applications also have a backend component. There is a server-side component, and you need to run those server-side services somewhere. For example, a trigger that you're building on, when you want to send a push notification to your users. That function or service needs to run somewhere, and we provide a microservices runtime where you can simply throw this service or function at Kinvey and deploy it on Kinvey, and we run it for you, we manage it for you, we scale it for you, we monitor it for you, we keep it highly available for you, keep it secure for you, and all of those things. We also have an engagement service that allows you to both send push notifications as well as email, more traditional email, SMS type notifications to your customers, and we abstract that so you don't have to deal with working with Apple's push notification service or the Google Messenger service. And we talked about this web dashboard application and how that it allows you to visualize data that's coming from your analytics engine. So we have a JavaScript SDK, HTML5 SDK, that allows you to build this web application, and it has access to same backend information, data, services, etc. And so you basically have a unified backend across both the client application for your patients, perhaps, and your providers and payers who want to look at the overall community data, have a web app, and they all are sharing the same backend and have same consistent architecture. Again, you're reducing complexity by doing this, and you're able to do things quickly because of the abstraction. So that's really the first point around this, right, is that by having these accelerators on the front end, we provide developers with freedom of choice and agility, because we are abstracting all the back-end nuances. And they don't have to worry about security, compliance, offline. It's all mobile-friendly. You know, they access data using a protocol and a payload format that they are familiar with, that is native to the platform that they are developing in, so they can work very, very quickly. On the other side, you know, with the standardized integration with Redox, you know, it's a single way of unifying all of the EHR data. With Kinvey, you're going beyond that and also unifying access to all your authentication systems, any other cloud-based services, other systems of record that you may want to integrate it, and you're doing it in a very standardized, reusable way, and you have all the IT support capabilities built in with our operational intelligence feature, where we provide dashboards that your IT support, tech support staff can use to troubleshoot, diagnose problems. And we'll sign the BAA, so in a shared responsibility model for HIPAA compliance, we take responsibility for all of these backend services and the SDK itself. So it reduces risk for you that you don't have to manage this aspect of the overall solution. And it really enables you to, agility, what it really means is that you're able to prototype very quickly and then iterate over that prototype and get to production. And with Kinvey, because of this SDK and this abstraction, your prototype is really production code, and you don't have to rewrite it to get into production, and that's an important factor to remember. So the next thing, part of the complexity and the challenge we talked about was patient-generated data that might, again, be coming from wearables, from other data sources, from within the app itself. It's being generated by the application itself. How do you integrate that into your app? So as part of the Kinvey SDK, we also provide, Apple has, for example, the research kit, which really defines a set of models and objects around patient surveys, things like that, for patient-reported outcomes, and other survey data that you may want to collect. And we have a research kit SDK as part of the Kinvey kit or the Kinvey SDK that is fully integrated, and all of this research kit model data can be sent back to the Kinvey backend and stored within the compliant data store that Kinvey provides. Because the research kit, all it gives you is a set of model definitions. It doesn't give you a persistent data store. We can also enable you to generate this data offline while the app or the user is offline, and then send it or sync it back to the data store when the device and the user come online again. Similarly, we have a CareKit SDK for Apple's CareKit, which again defines a bunch of models around patient to provider communications and how to really deliver care via an app, via a mobile app to the patient. There's also the Apple Health Kit, which is used more for communicating with, for example, data from wearables that might track vital stats like your pulse and your steps and your activity and other things, Fitbits, things like that. And we're also working on a similar type of kit, a Kinvey kit around all of the models related to HealthKit. Outside of the Apple ecosystem, there are people developing similar capabilities on Android, like Research Stack is one example of that, of patient or user-generated data, and that is also integrated with the Kinvey SDK, and you can send it back to a compliant data store either on Kinvey or to an external EHR system via Redox. So that's on how we make it easy on patient-generated data and give you accelerators to make that easy for you to collect that data, not just collect it, but also persist it in a compliant way, and then allow via the responsive web app to be able to visualize all of this information across, again, your entire user community. The fourth thing we want to talk about is, how do I create engaging app experiences, and and that's across all of your users, whether they are patients, healthcare providers, payers, researchers. You want to make sure that with Kinvey, for example, to make this experience very engaging, we have the 11 different SDKs, so you can build an experience in a mobile application. You can engage your users in a web application, so it's anywhere, anytime, any device. We make it easy because we allow the developer to focus on the user experience and the UI to engage their users instead of having to worry about all the backend systems and the backend integration and so on. You can use our backend services to create triggers so that you make sure that any notifications you're sending are intelligent and they are proactive. You see the user performing certain activities, and based on that activity you can create a very intelligent push notification that is related to the context of what they are doing or where they are. We have geolocation information that you can take advantage of in the backend and trigger based on location, for example. And you can build many types of very innovative experiences. For example, one experience that people are increasingly talking to us about are what are called chatbots, where you want to engage with your users that are not necessarily using your application, but maybe on a messaging platform like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or something like that. That's where your user is, and you want to have a bot on that platform that engages with your users and provides maybe a subset of the experience that is there in the mobile app on giving them useful information, allowing them questions that translate to requests for data at the back end or to the electronic health record. So we provide accelerators that help you. So we have modules in our backend that allow you to engage with the user with these chatbots and make it easy for you to build these chatbots. And as you get to this multitude of different experiences, especially on chatbots, for example, you need to ensure that these are trusted and they can be secure and they are compliant. And make sure the data transmissions are all encrypted, make sure privacy is respected, make sure nobody else can see all of this data. And so that's what using our SDK or our chatbot modules will give you, is that we can assure that that the experience can be trusted and it's compliant and it's secure. And any data, sensitive data transmission, for example, is encrypted. That we are following a protocol to engage with the backend system that is trusted, uses a third-party signed certificate, for example, things of that nature. So that's how you make it easy for you to create a very engaging experience. The next thing up that we haven't talked about in that picture, we talked about multiple challenges, is one of the challenges was you're now getting data from multiple different systems, right? The user-generated data that is coming, like I talked about, from wearables, whatever else, that, or just patient-reported surveys, things like that, and you have data from the electronic health records and other cloud systems that you may be using. Now, how do you? A lot of our customers come to us and want to talk about how do I aggregate all of this data from all these different sources and get useful insights from this data, and what kind of analytic engines can I use to get these insights. And this is where our partnership with Google, who is our HIPAA compliant cloud provider, comes into play, because they have services around data analytics and big data that are really good and can handle a very, very large scale. And this is Google's BigQuery engine, where you can basically take data that you're storing either in Kinvey's compliant data store, or data that's coming from the EHR systems and the user-generated data, aggregate all of that into Google BigQuery, either build or use the existing analytics tools that are available, or maybe the machine learning algorithms that are available with Google on this data to get a lot of insights. And BigQuery can handle a very large scale, really petabytes of data at a very low cost. And again, because it's available as a service, and Google is taking care of all of your infrastructure needs. How do I scale to handle petabytes of data? How do I make sure I do that in a secure way? And you can sign the business associate agreement for use of Google BigQuery as well. So you can trust their compliance. And they give you the sophisticated algorithms that are already built in to do the analysis of the data, or you can build your own analytics engine. Finally, some of this useful insight can be fed back via Kinvey to your responsive web app dashboard that a provider or a researcher or even sometimes a payer may want to use to study some of the broader implications of the aggregate data from these various sources. And the other thing that Google BigQuery is really good at is the speed at which all of this analysis can be done, how quickly data can be stored and accessed. So they really have a very optimized tool to do all of these things. So to summarize, these were the 5 things we talked about. The number one was the how do you heard from Nico at Redox of how to integrate with the different EHR systems that are out there. How do you reduce complexity, provide freedom for your developers was number 2, while at the same time ensuring things are secure. How to integrate user-generated data. We talked about the research kit, the health kit, care kit, research stack, things like that. How to create engaging experiences, and finally, this analytics big data piece. So this is how it all comes together. You can see the same picture that we used to talk about the challenges, where you have the user-generated data source on the left, you have the Kinvey SDKs that abstract everything for you and keep everything secure, encrypted. You have the backend services in the middle that connect via Redox, what Nico talked about with Redox and their JSON API, to the different healthcare systems, whether it's an Epic or a Cerner, an Allscripts, or any other system that is a store for, it's a system of record for health records. Redox can connect to, and that's integrated with Kinvey. Other cloud services or IoT systems can also be integrated with Kinvey. You can provide these dashboards for your researchers, payers, providers. And then finally, the BigQuery, which is the analytics engine to which data can be exported, insights returned back to the dashboard app, or perhaps even to the mobile app, if you want to show your users how they are tracking against the population as a whole, for example. And you're doing this all in a compliant fashion. At every part of this process, you as a HIPAA certified entity have BAAs where your partners, in this case Kinvey, Redox, Google, are sharing in your responsibility for HIPAA compliance with their respective BAAs covering their portion of the overall solution. Again, that reduces your risk, your complexity, and things you have to deal with. And once you put all this together and you go live with Kinvey, you get the operational intelligence feature that allows your tech support people to easily tackle problems that that your users are reporting from the field. Again, whether they be performance problems or functional issues, they're able to quickly drill down and find root cause and get to speedy resolution of these issues. So really, with these things coming together, you can get to your own healthcare innovation platform very quickly and have a lot of features, a very comprehensive set of features to go along with this platform. So that's all I had on this for today. Our next webinar in this series, like I said, is on the 15th of December. As part of this series of webinars we are having, Digital Innovation Healthcare, 3 p.m. Eastern, and it will be Neil Gomes from Thomas Jefferson University Hospitals that's going to talk about how he built his innovation platform for his organization and some of the challenges and solutions that he put together. So that's all I have for now. We're going to get into a Q&A session at this point. Let's see if we have any questions. I think I have one question that came up. This is maybe Nico, you're best equipped to answer this. What is the difference between using Redox and a standard interface engine or API management tool?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most health systems have an interface engine that is on premise that's used to exchange data between the EHR and other systems like your lab system or your radiology system. The main difference is that those interface engines were designed to keep data on premise within the four walls of the health system in the data center. And they primarily just bounce HL7 around. So the interface team is managing this interface engine and routing messages from the left hand to the right hand within the data center. The Redox, when we're doing an integration, we actually hook into these legacy interface engines oftentimes to pull data out and bring it into the cloud and do the standardization there. So the main difference is that we enable the cloud-based integration with third-party applications as well as applications that you're looking to build, as well as standardize the data coming out of the EHR rather than just moving it around. And then the second part to that question was, how is it different than an API management tool? Redox is definitely in that category of API management tools, but we have a managed service around it. So we're not relying on the health systems IT team to manage and maintain the API, both the connectivity to the EHR as well as the standardization of the messages. That's something that we take on because it can be a burdensome task. By centralizing that with Redox, we're able to do it much more efficiently than each individual health system and each individual application having their own teams to do that. Additionally, we have a standardized API that remains consistent across all different sites that we're integrating with, and that brings a ton of efficiency when we're talking about going between site to site. So that's kind of the main differences between that. But we're part of that ecosystem and part of that infrastructure of integration across the EHR, standard interface engines, enterprise service buses, and then cloud-based integration engines. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Nico. Thanks for answering that, Nico. Another question that just came in, maybe this one I can tackle, is tell us more about Kinvey's HIPAA compliance and what exactly do you do that enables you to sign a BAA. So first off, there are product capabilities, some of which I referred to in my presentation, which are, encryption of data both at rest and in flight. And then how do you manage those encryption keys, and are they compliant? Really, when you get to HIPAA compliance, you're trying to comply with a set of guidelines that HIPAA High-Tech Act has put together that are also overlap a lot and are consistent with a lot of the security requirements from the National Institute of Software Technology, NIST. Data encryption is one, the key management is another. How do you handle network communications and securing network communications, for example, with third-party signed certificates. So a bunch of product features have to be in place as a foundation, which we have that enables us to do the BAA. But more importantly, bulk of the work is around having a lot of these safeguards that are called out in the high-tech rule, right? And these safeguards are around administrative safeguards, physical safeguards, technical safeguards, policies, procedures, breach notification, very, very important piece of the entire puzzle. And having that all formalized, those procedures in place, and having yourself assessed that these policies and procedures are compliant with the HIPAA high-tech rule is where we've spent a lot of time and money and invested a lot to make sure that we are compliant. That then enables us to take on the risk and sign the business associate agreement with customers, these certified entities. I have another question again, Nico, that you might be able to answer. How does Redox connect to our EHR on-prem solution if I'm a healthcare facility, for example?
Yeah, definitely. So we connect up to most on-premise legacy systems through a secure VPN connection. So typically that's working with a network team to set up that VPN and then working with the interface team to have messages routed through the VPN. Once messages are in our cloud, we do all of the work to map those messages into our standard API models. So we're not asking for interface teams to abide by a certain specification. We are doing all the mapping on our side. So whatever the EHR is producing out of the box, we're able to consume and map into our models because we've built an engine that essentially has building blocks that we can take and reuse from all the different times we've seen it. So we've seen ADT coming out of Epic 100 times. We have the building blocks to apply to your specific Epic ADT feed to make that process a lot faster. So we just take on that burden ourselves to make it as easy as possible for IT teams to integrate and not have to do that work themselves. Thanks.
Got it. And another question that just came in was, can't I just use FHIR for the health record and not have to worry about something like Redox? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So FHIR, for those of you who aren't aware, is a new standard that's being produced by HL7 and the hope is that FHIR will help us get around some of the inconsistency issues and really modernize some of the APIs that health systems or that EHR vendors are creating. So we're absolutely excited about FHIR being rolled out by EHR vendors. We're part of Project Argonaut, which is a group of vendors who are testing out the FHIR specifications and helping to move the project along faster. So we're really excited about pushing it forward and helping EHR vendors do it consistently. That being said, it looks like we're still a couple years out from seeing FHIR out in the wild, and the implementations that we have seen or the plans for implementations look like it'll be implemented rather inconsistently. So we still see that there's a need to map those interfaces into something more standardized, something intentionally standardized, as well as maintain connectivity to all the different implementations of FHIR across the country and standardize those in a centralized API as well. So although it'll make our job 100 times easier because we're not having to work with HL7 v2 anymore, the FHIR adoption is an incremental step towards solving this interoperability problem, but doesn't fully address the consistency nor the connectivity problem. And that's what we're looking to help people support as FHIR is being rolled out.
Great. I think any other questions? Looks like that's the set of questions that we have come in. So we'll conclude at this point. Thanks everyone for attending, and thank you, Nico, for your time today. And once again, see you all on the 15th for the next webinar.